Had a gut feeling my spouse was gearing up for a divorce, so I safeguarded my finances. 2 weeks later, she initiated the process but retracted when her strategy unraveled. Greetings, everyone. Before diving into today's tale, I need your support. Our platform's momentum is slowing, and subscribing is a fantastic way to help us keep going. It's free, fast, and ensures we can continue delivering engaging stories. Your encouragement means the world. Let's grow this community together. Thank you immensely. Now let's dive in. Hey folks, I've been quietly browsing stories here for ages, never imagining I'd have one to share. Life, though, has a knack for throwing curveballs, and I've been carrying this burden for months. I need to unburden myself. To be clear, I'm not one to leap to assumptions or expect the worst. My wife, let's call her S, and I have been a couple for 6 years, wed for 4. Things seemed rock solid, or so I believed. We had our share of highs and lows, but nothing screamed trouble. For most of our time together, we were that duo, devoted partners in sync. We shared silly private jokes, bickered endlessly over movie picks, and had a rhythm that clicked. She'd plan thoughtful date nights, and I'd surprise her with her favorite takeout after a tough day. It felt seamless, like we'd cracked the code to love. That's why the shift hit me like a freight train. About 6 months back, things started changing. At first, it was subtle stuff, things you'd overlook unless you were watching closely. She began clutching her phone everywhere, even for quick trips to the kitchen or while sorting laundry. Before, her phone would lie on the coffee table for hours and she didn't care who touched it. One day I teased, "What, are you running a covert operation now?" She laughed it off, saying, "No, just work emails piling up." Fair enough. But days later, she set a password. That threw me because she'd never bothered before. When I casually asked why, she mumbled something about security and cyber threats. I didn't push, not wanting to seem distrustful, but it felt odd. And it didn't stop there. She started stepping out of the room for calls, something she'd never done. It wasn't discreet either. Her phone would buzz and she'd say, "Oh, I'll just take this quick," before vanishing to the bedroom or the patio. If I asked who it was, she'd brush it off with, "Just a work friend." Then I noticed a new quirk, keeping her phone screen down on the table. I didn't even know that was a thing until I reached to pass her something, and she swiftly moved her phone aside. It was a fleeting moment, but it stuck with me, growing apart. It wasn't just the phone, though. She seemed withdrawn. Talks that once flowed effortlessly now felt forced. When I mentioned future plans, like where to celebrate our anniversary or saving for a new car, nod vaguely, say, "Sure, we'll figure it out," and change the topic. It all crystallized one day when she said she was meeting a friend for coffee. She does that sometimes, and I happened to be nearby running errands, so I thought, why not drop by? It'd be sweet. But when I got there, she wasn't with a friend. She was pacing outside the cafe, phone to her ear, looking intense. I stayed in my car, sensing something serious in her tone. I didn't mean to overhear, but I caught snippets like, "It's nearly set," and "starting over soon." My heart sank. I couldn't piece it together, but it didn't sound like a work or friend issue. It felt bigger, like a plan she'd been crafting. When she got home, I asked how her coffee went, keeping my tone light. She spun a detailed story about her friend venting about a boyfriend. The lie was so smooth I just stared for a second, then came another red flag. Out of nowhere, she suggested we organize our finances. "What do you mean?" I asked. She shrugged. "Just, having all our account details, passwords, documents in one place, for emergencies." We'd never talked about this before, and the timing felt off, especially with everything else I'd noticed. "What kind of emergencies?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She shrugged again. "It's just practical, right? What if something happens to one of us, or we need to make a big financial call fast?" Her reasoning sounded logical, but her delivery unnerved me. It was too rehearsed, like she'd been waiting to drop it. I nodded, saying, "Yeah, makes sense," but inside, warning bells blared. Why now? Why the sudden push to tidy our finances when we'd always kept them separate and relaxed? That night, I replayed her words, trying to decode them. Was this just normal adult stuff, or was I overanalyzing? But the phone calls, the cafe conversation, and her distance painted a troubling picture. I stayed quiet until she brought it up again. We were in the kitchen. I was fixing a snack. She was scrolling her phone when she said, "Have you thought about sorting the bank stuff? Like, do you know where all the account info is?" I set down my knife and turned. "Okay, what's going on?" I asked, keeping my voice steady but firm. "You've been harping on finances lately. Is there something we need to discuss?" She looked up, startled I'd called her out. "No, nothing's wrong," she said quickly, forcing a smile. "I just think it's smart, for emergencies." Emergencies like what? I pressed. She shrugged, her face blank. I don't know, just life things. It's not a big deal, I swear. Her vague answers didn't sit right. I nodded and dropped it, but her evasiveness fueled my unease. It no longer felt like a casual idea. It seemed like she was hiding something, and I needed to know what. The next day, while she was at work, I checked our joint account online and found something odd. Over the past month, small transfers had occurred. Nothing huge, but sums without clear purposes, not tied to bills or groceries. I didn't want to assume the worst, but it looked like she was siphoning money for some unknown reason. I thought about confronting her but held back. If I was wrong, I'd look foolish. If I was right, I needed to tread carefully. It was gnawing at me, so I called a trusted college buddy who's a lawyer. I laid out what I'd seen, trying not to sound like a tinfoil hat wearer. "Listen," he said after hearing me out. "I'm not saying something's definitely up, but you're not crazy for wanting to be cautious. If you're worried about your assets, act now. Better safe than sorry." He guided me through steps to shield my finances if things went south. Taking such measures felt surreal, like bracing for a disaster I wasn't sure was coming. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. If she was plotting something, and I was starting to believe she was, I had to protect myself. It wasn't an easy call, though. This wasn't just about money. It was about the life we'd built. Memories flooded back, our wedding, late-night talks about our goals, our quirky inside jokes. How did we end up here? Was this what our marriage had become? Taking these steps felt like admitting defeat, like I was giving up on the trust we'd shared. That night, while she was out, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. My hands trembled as I sifted through everything: bank accounts, investments, the property deed. Each document felt like a betrayal, but a voice in my head insisted this was about self-preservation, not sabotage. I didn't want to harm her. I just couldn't shake the fear that I'd regret inaction later. I made a list of what I could move and how to do it discreetly. As I typed, a heavy weight settled in my chest. I'd trusted her completely for years, and now I was playing defense against the person I thought would always support me. I called my mom, explaining I needed her help without diving into specifics. "I need you to hold some things for me for a bit. It's not bad, just a precaution." She paused, probably sensing what I wasn't saying. "Are you okay?" Her voice was laced with worry. "Yeah," I lied, "just being careful." She didn't pry, but I heard the concern in her tone when she said, "Of course, honey, whatever you need." Hanging up, I felt a mix of guilt and relief. I hated dragging her into this, but her support steadied me in the chaos. By the time S got home, I'd started the process. I transferred most of my assets, savings, investments, even the house, into my mom's name. I left enough in our joint account to avoid suspicion, but the rest was secured. She didn't notice. She walked in, pecked my cheek, and asked if I wanted to watch a film. I acted normal, but inside I was a mess. Part of me felt guilty, like I'd violated her trust. Another part felt empowered, like I'd reclaimed control of a spiraling situation. For the next few days, I kept up the routine, not letting on that anything had changed. She seemed content, even oddly upbeat at times. Instead of reassuring me, it heightened my suspicions. If she was scheming, she was masking it well. What struck me, though, was that she stopped mentioning finances entirely, even after I'd questioned her last time. It was like the topic had vanished from her mind. At first, I wondered if I'd overreacted, and she'd dropped it because it wasn't important. But the more I reflected, the more I realized she was dodging it, almost like she feared raising it again after I pushed back. I caught her glancing at me a few times, as if gauging my mood or debating whether to speak. Whenever I noticed, she'd quickly shift focus, to her phone, the TV, a book. It was subtle, but there. It felt like she was waiting for me to bring it up, hesitant to push further. The silence only amplified my anxiety. It wasn't like her to abandon something she deemed vital, and her sudden avoidance seemed calculated. If she was testing me, she wasn't diving in. If she was waiting for something, I wasn't giving her an opening. Whatever her next step was, I had to stay ahead. That night, I double-checked everything. I reviewed the paperwork, ensuring all transfers to my mom were airtight. The house, savings, investments, everything was legally hers, locked in a trust. I even called her to confirm she had all the documents. 2 weeks passed, and things seemed eerily normal. S was acting warmer, even chatting about random things like work or dinner plans. It threw me off because she'd been distant for months, avoiding anything beyond surface-level talk. Part of me wondered if I'd misread everything. Maybe her odd behavior was just stress or something I didn't get. But then one random Friday evening, she sat me down, turned off the TV, and said, We need to talk. My stomach plummeted. I knew what was coming before she spoke. I think we should divorce, she said, her voice so steady it felt scripted. It wasn't angry or emotional, just cold like she was stating a fact. I stared, unsure how to react as she laid out her case. She talked about needing space, finding herself, and feeling like she'd lost who she was in our marriage. Generic breakup lines that explained nothing. Then she said something that shifted the tone. You know, I've given up a lot for you over the years, and I don't think you've truly valued it. I deserve better. That last bit stung. It wasn't just that she wanted out. It was how she framed it, like I owed her, like everything was my fault, and she was entitled to more. As I sat there processing her words, a question nagged at me. Why now? Then she dropped another clue. A friend's been helping me see things clearly, she said, avoiding my gaze. A friend. I stayed calm, letting her talk, but my mind raced. Who was this friend? Why were they so involved in our marriage? The way she said it wasn't casual. It felt like someone had been coaching her, convincing her that leaving me was a plan she needed to execute. The more she spoke about deserving more due to her sacrifices, the more I doubted her. Sacrifices? Like what? She'd seemed happy with me, or so she claimed. I'd worked hard to give her the life she wanted, and it wasn't just about money. When she wanted to move closer to her job, I agreed, despite a longer commute for me. When she wanted that expensive yoga retreat last year, I budgeted for it, skipping a trip I'd wanted so she could go. I supported her through 2 career changes, encouraging her to take risks because I wanted her fulfilled. I believed being a good husband meant prioritizing her when I could. And I wasn't some distant partner. I showed up. I remembered birthdays, her favorite little things. When she felt stuck, I suggested date nights. I listened to her vent about work, friends, family. I wasn't perfect, but I tried. That's why her "I deserve better" line cut deep. I wasn't buying it. She wasn't upset because of me. Something, or someone, had shifted her perspective. Maybe it was this friend she mentioned, or something else. But the woman before me wasn't the one I married, and I wasn't letting her rewrite our story to suit her new narrative. I didn't challenge her then. I nodded and said something neutral like, "If that's how you feel, we should plan next steps." She seemed surprised I didn't fight or plead, but I didn't care. My focus had shifted. I needed to uncover who or what was behind her sudden, calculated change. After that talk, she moved to her own place, and by Monday, I got divorce papers. They weren't just about ending the marriage. They were aggressive. She wanted half the house, my savings, my assets, the car, everything. Plus, vague spousal support clauses that made no sense given her solid income. It felt like she expected to walk away with all I'd built. At first, I thought she was just bitter, but the precision of her demands suggested someone was advising her. So, I started investigating. I couldn't just ask who she'd been talking to, so I got strategic. I checked her social media. She hadn't blocked me. She rarely posted, but I scoured her tagged photos and comments for clues. That's when I noticed a pattern. A guy named Matt kept liking and commenting on her posts. Nothing blatant, but enough to catch my eye. I clicked his profile, which was public. At first, he seemed like a typical 30-something marketing guy. But as I scrolled, I saw something odd. A photo at the same cafe I'd seen her at weeks earlier, posted the same day I overheard her talk about starting over. My stomach churned. I kept digging, finding subtle hints. A "you've got this" comment on her post, a selfie from what looked like her new place. It wasn't hard proof, but it was enough to make me wary. I didn't know what to do with this, but I couldn't just wait for answers. Her mention of a friend, helping her see clearly, stuck with me, and I needed to know who it was. I reached out to a mutual friend, Claire, who'd known S for years and might have insight. I kept it casual, asking if she'd talked to S lately or noticed anything off. Claire shut down fast, saying she knew nothing about any friend or advice. I probed a bit, but she got defensive and ended the call like she wanted no part of it. That felt off, like she was hiding something. Undeterred, I called another friend, Sarah. I used the same approach, saying I was trying to make sense of things. She was cagey at first, giving vague answers. When I pushed, she hung up abruptly, leaving me more suspicious. To my surprise, Sarah called back later, saying she needed assurance her words wouldn't get back to S. I promised confidentiality, and after a pause, she spilled. Apparently, S had been hanging out a lot with a guy named Matt from work. Sarah didn't know much, but she'd heard Matt was heavily involved in the divorce advice S was getting. Hearing that name clicked like a puzzle piece. It was enough to confirm my suspicions, and I knew I had to stay sharp to protect myself moving forward.